The Kybalion and mental transmutation. Welcome everyone to this video discussing the Hermetic principles and how they relate in our lives on a daily basis, how we're affected by these laws, and how we can learn to practice mental alchemy. I further want to tie in this video these Hermetic principles I'm going to discuss here, namely being rhythm, polarity, and mentalism. And I want to tie them into yogic philosophy, even-mindedness, and kind of elaborate on how they underlie a lot of spiritual traditions and, philosophies. This great Hermetic science is really at the foundation of so much. And, without further ado, let's dive in. The Kybalion. Hit that like button if you enjoy this video and share it with someone you think it will impact. This is Reality Files. I'm Kristian. Let's do this thing. I'm going to skip over, all the intros to the laws and just hoping you have some background understanding, although I will elaborate on anything essential to the video. So diving into some, texts I grabbed from the Kybalion here on mental transmutation. If the universe is mental in its nature, then mental transmutation must be the art of changing the conditions of the universe along the lines of matter, force, and mind. You see, the first law of the Kybalion is mentalism, that all is mind, that we live in an ocean of mind, and that divine cosmic mind has manifestations, inward, basically. Manifestations of energy, power, and matter. And that if the causation realm is of mind, that by learning mental transmutation within us and learning to work with the laws of the universe, we can learn how to essentially control and, master the art of mental alchemy internally and learn to control the outer world, the outer environment. So you see, therefore, that mental transmutation is really the magic of what the ancients, of which the ancients writers had so much to say in their mystical works and about what they gave so few practical instructions, magic. If all be mental, then the art which enables one to transmute mental conditions must render the master the controller of material conditions as well as those ordinarily called mental. Right? So we're really discussing mental alchemy here, my friends. We're going to get into practical application, but I want to keep reading here. The student and practitioner of mental transmutation works among the mental plane, transmuting mental conditions, states, into others according to various formulas, more or less efficacious. The various treatments, affirmations, denials, etc. of the schools of mental science are but formulas, often quite imperfect and unscientific. We live in this age of, psychology and spirituality and all these different affirmations and, all of this spewing forth, but the ancient psychology, the mystical psychology was rooted in Hermeticism, was rooted in the knowledge of these laws that are operating within. And by this knowledge of laws, we can intuitively and instinctively create our own formulas to remedy our condition, right? This is kind of the goal of Hermetics in a large way, is the mastery over the internal environment, right? So these various treatments, affirmations, denials of modern mental science are often quite imperfect and unscientific. Of the Hermetic art, the majority of modern practitioners are quite ignorant compared to the ancient masters, for they lack the fundamental knowledge upon which the work is based. Not only may the mental states of oneself be changed or transmuted by Hermetic methods, but also the states of others may be and are constantly transmuted in the same way, usually unconsciously, but often consciously by some understanding of the laws and principles, in cases where the people affected are not informed of the principles of self-protection. And more than this, as many students and practitioners of modern mental science know, every material condition depending upon the minds of other people may be changed or transmuted in accordance with the earnest desire, will, and treatments of person desiring changed conditions of life. The public are so generally informed regarding these things at present that we do not need to mention them at some length. Think about NLP. NLP is kind of the art of influencing others. There's this science of influence, whether it's through body language, your vibration, your character, your charisma, right? This is all part of the Hermetic Science. Now I want to get into, kind of tying this into our life. And I've made a video before, go check it out after this one, on the Kybalion and mental alchemy. Just type that in with reality files on YouTube and you'll find it. But I talked a lot about rhythm and even-mindedness there. I just want to hit it again because it's so important. It's such an important idea that we all face, my friends. Here's the thing. The law of rhythm states that the pendulum will swing an equal degree, from the left to the right. Rhythm is the tides of life. The tides will come in and then they'll ebb and flow out, right? There's an ebb and flow, a rise and fall. The sun rises to its zenith and then it begins to set, right? The year begins with the spring and begins its end with the fall into the winter. Everything has a cycle. Everything has a rhythm between the polarities. And the further you cycle, let's say, towards fear, also the further you can cycle towards courage. The further you go into joy, the further you're going to get into sorrow. There's this equal balance, this law of equal exchange of rhythm here, right? And it happens in all places of our life. And the thing is we are constantly running from the laws of rhythm, right? We feel negatively. Let's say we're feeling, a negative emotion. Instead of observing that and, like studying ourselves and learning to rise above the pendulum swing, right? We react to it. We run away from that negative feeling, that negative experience that's happening in life, instead of embracing it fully. And through embracing it fully, right, by not resisting that negative experience, it usually turns into a positive experience. But furthermore, it creates room for the equal pendulum swing on the other side that is coming in life, right? This principle of rhythm is everywhere. For instance, all of a sudden, everything's going to be going great with your partner. And then the next week, everything might be in shit. And you have to do a lot of clearing work. You're going to have to, have a lot of hard conversations. Internally, you might be feeling great one day and low the other day. You might be feeling purpose and focus and then, low energy, lack of enthusiasm. The pendulum is constantly swinging. But you see, the master knows the art of neutralization, and he practices these axioms, these ancient axioms that help him navigate these laws of the universe and laws of the inner world to gain degrees of self-mastery. So let's dive in a little bit on the law of rhythm. The Hermeticists carry the principle much further than the modern, understanding, and know that it is a manifestation, that its manifestation and influence extend to the mental activities of man, and that it accounts for the bewildering succession of moods, feelings, and other annoying, perplexing changes that we notice in ourselves. But the Hermeticists, by studying the operations of this principle, have learned to escape some of its activities by transmutation. In the beginning of the Kybalion, it states that the law of rhythm, most are used by it, constantly reacting to their states. But the masters use it. They use the law of rhythm, right? The Hermeticists carry it still further. They teach that man's mental states are subject to the same law. The man who enjoys keenly is subject to keen suffering, while he who feels but little pain is capable of feeling but little joy. The pig suffers but little mentally and enjoys but little mentally. He is equally compensated. The Hermetic masters long since discovered that while the principle of rhythm was invariable and ever in evidence in the mental phenomena, there were two planes of its manifestation so far as mental phenomena are concerned. They discovered that there were two general planes of consciousness, the lower and the higher, right? The lower, the dense realm of mind, it's rooted in the earth, and the higher mind, the understanding of which fact enabled them to rise to the higher plane and thus escape the swing of the rhythmic pendulum, which manifested on the lower plane. In other words, the swing of the pendulum occurred in the unconscious plane, or the subconscious mind, but the consciousness was not affected. This they call the law of neutralization. Okay, I want to get in on this. Its operation consists in the rising of the ego above the vibrations of the unconscious plane of mental activity, so that the negative swing of the pendulum is not manifested in consciousness, and therefore they are not affected. It is akin to rising above a thing and letting it pass beneath you. The Hermetic Masters or advanced student polarizes himself at the desired pole, and by a process akin to refusing to participate in the backward swing, or if you prefer, denial of its influence over him, he stands firm in his polarized position and allows the mental pendulum to swing back along the unconscious plane. All individuals who have attained any degree of self-mastery accomplish this more or less unknowingly, and by refusing to allow their moods and negative mental states to affect them, they apply the law of neutralization. The master, however, carries this to a much higher degree of proficiency, and by use of his will, he attains a degree of poise and mental firmness almost impossible of belief on the part of those who allow themselves to be swung backward and forward by the mental pendulum of moods and feelings. Right. So, my friends, a lot of the Kybalion is about the will and how through the will and intelligent use of the laws of, the Hermetic laws, one can gain degrees of self-mastery and mastery over reality, right? And this self-mastery we're talking about here, I agree with half of this. I think there's another piece I kind of want to get into on even-mindedness here. There's huge reaching importance in all of that we're discussing here, because this is external and internal, right? The money will rise and then it will fall. You'll have a summer, a lot of abundance, woman, money, and then you'll have a winter, right? And it's learning to embrace both of those and not let them affect the internal state per se. To pursue even-mindedness, right? I want to transfer over to even-mindedness for a second and talk about the law of neutralization and training of the will. Even-mindedness. In yoga, there's this axiom to pursue even-mindedness above all else, where one is above the four worldly winds of pleasure and pain, of gain and loss, of ill repute, or high reputation or fame, right? We have these poles of the world, right? And they create these negative states inside of us. All of a sudden we'll go through loss and be so reactive to it, but we don't understand great gain is coming, right? We'll go through a cataclysm in our life. Maybe we'll lose a lover, or we'll lose money, or we'll lose our health, but we don't understand the purpose of it. We are essentially blind down here. We are so blind. And oftentimes we are at the throes of the pendulum instead of observing ourselves in the pendulum, observing the pendulum within us, right? There's a Stoic and yogic axiom of the acceptance of pain, the acceptance of all that comes to you woven in the pattern of your destiny, and studying yourself and realizing that it's all happening for you. All pain comes to you mentally, emotionally, physically, in your life circumstances as purifying, right? That pain is purifying to bring you into greater balance with the laws. Acceptance of all that comes to you, right? Of all that comes to you, whether it's in relationships, in finance, in business, in your personal life, in your practices, the acceptance of all that comes to you as your training grounds, the training grounds for your internal mastery and your will, right? To do this, we need non-attachment and non-resistance to the throes of life, to the pendulum swinging, so that we can rise above it. We cannot rise above the pendulum swing if we are rooted in attachment or resistance, right? Even-mindedness. So, in your life, right, if you get super excited, about something, whether it's making money, you're going to suffer a lot when you lose money, right? If you get overjoyed, you're probably going to get overly depressed, right? And it's beautiful. How can we dance with that rhythm of life? Because if we actually don't feel our sorrow fully, if we don't feel the tears, we'll never feel the laughter fully. We won't ever really live because we're lukewarm. How do we live in the fullness and dance with the rhythms of life, right? But rise above the negative pull of the pendulum? How do we neutralize that inside of ourselves? And it is to pursue even-mindedness above all, because even-mindedness roots you in the higher mind. Okay, this is what the video is about. The higher mind. In yoga, there's this idea of the seen world, the world that changes your body, your lower mind, right? Your emotions, your purpose, your relationships, your environment, all of that's changing. That's the seen world. But then there's the seer. There's the one observing it all. The spirit dancing behind the throes of fate, the highs and lows of life. Think of this as the higher mind, the seer, right? Observing it. The more we can pursue the seer and the higher mind, right? The more we can be rooted in it when perceived negative experiences come, although there is no really good or bad. It's all a rate of vibration here, right? But when these negative vibrations come into our life, if we can be rooted and be pursuing even-mindedness, even in the good times, when the bad times hit, we can be rooted in the seer. We can neutralize, we can dissolve reality. You see, dissolving reality comes from being rooted in that which is behind, superior to reality, to the inferior seen world, right? So in your life, when things are going great, enjoy them. But at the same time, realize that this is temporary. Don't hold on to it, right? Accept the high times and accept the low times, but through it all, on a daily basis, in your breath work, in your breathing, to remind yourself of divine detachment, to remind yourself of the seer, and to pursue even-mindedness above all. In the presence of gain, if you are pursuing even-mindedness, you won't have a huge emotional swing, or maybe you will, but you won't necessarily ride it. So therefore, you don't necessarily need to ride the negative swing that's coming with the loss in the future, right? Like success and failure, pleasure and pain, all of it, the same thing, right? Furthermore, this goes into, my friends, just like your internal state of being all the time is swinging back and forth throughout the day. If you're self-aware, you're going to notice these cycles that you go through. All of a sudden you'll be feeling good and full of life, and then you'll be feeling fatigued, or you're feeling love and then you're feeling melancholy. You go through these little cycles, and your capacity to just let the pendulum swing and rise to the higher mind during the negatives and then polarize yourself intelligently, which is the next step, right, allows you to literally take command of your internal environment. So, even-mindedness, step 1. Step 2, he elaborated on it briefly here, right? And this is about mental firmness and will and attitude. Essentially, my friends, if you're in a state of, depression, but you want to take action, and that's your true will, is to take action on your business or on your dreams or whatever it is, whatever creation, right? You must polarize, you must neutralize the swing of the pendulum that's going towards depression. This is neutralization, right? Going into the higher mind, the acceptance. Whatever we resist persists. If we're resisting the depression, it's going to persist. It's actually going to get worse. But if we accept it and rise above it into the higher mind, into the seer, dancing behind it all, then we have the platform of equanimity in which we can use our will and our attitude, right, to attain to a new state, a new rate of vibration, a new polarity within, right? So in that higher mind, from that place, we can, start doing some breathing, start doing some breath work. And if you guys want to go into the Breathwork and Sovereignty Master, program with me, there's this group program, great thing coming out at the end of April and further seasons into the year. You can apply, link in the description, or you can just email me to get involved with that. But anyways, during breathwork especially, we can find that even-mindedness, that higher mind. And through our will, we can polarize ourselves at the place, at the state we intend. I call this the attitude. The attitude is the quality of energy in which you are creating. Attitude is the quality of energy in which you are creating, right? So we can hold ourselves in that poise, that posture of confidence and enthusiasm with a gentle inner smile, right? We can breathe into that. We can breathe energy and life into that principle, holding our mind fixed on that point, right? Exhale and release into it. Inhale, breathe life into it. Exhale and dissolve reality. Dissolve what you're feeling. Let go, right? Completely let go and have non-attachment to this present moment. Feel what is. And then breathe in and charge up that image of self, that attitude, that quality of energy you are creating. You will begin to polarize yourself at the opposite end of the pendulum swing, therefore to slow it or reverse the pendulum swing to the pole in which you want to maintain, right? This process must be mastered internally if you ever wish to master the law of rhythm externally. You see, gain and loss in your life, let's say relationships are going great, right? Relationships will inevitably fall onto rocky times, rocky roads, and that's great. That's there for you to learn. That's there for you to develop your character, those turbulent times in the world, right? But through this process, internally, you can learn to alchemize states externally because the same principles apply. This is a higher science. It's very hard to elaborate on, but this is what magic is. When we learn to master our internal environment, we can learn to accept the pendulum and see and understand the pendulum swinging in our lives and how we can intelligently direct our will and place ourselves, in accordance with law to start creating in alignment with law intelligently, right? This is magic in a high degree. And something I wanted to communicate to you, these two steps, first neutralization, essentially presence, and then will, right? And there's this right amount of pressure that you got to find in your life, my friends, between surrendering and a disciplined mind, like surrendering to the universe, feeling what you're feeling, and then directing your will. There's these two different polarities in all things, and you must learn to alchemize to find the balance between, right? Transmutation is a transformation of energies from a base state to a more noble state. And to do that internally, we must learn how to balance opposites correctly, intelligently for each situation, right? Sometimes situations are going to call for more surrender, to really feel your feelings fully, let them come through, right? To allow space for a higher quality of design to come through per se, right? And then there's other times it's time to really master our will, our mental firmness, our attitude, right? To create the state in which we want to see, to create the world in which we want to see. And the act of alchemy is bringing these two together. You see what I'm saying here? These two polarities, right? So I hope I did justice to this really deep law and applying it into our lives. It's very hard to discuss these things, especially once we get into the magical level. But I hope this video impacted you in some way deeply. If it did, please drop a comment below with your thoughts if you want to see more videos on the Kybalion, on these Hermetic sciences. And furthermore, if you guys want to talk to me one-on-one, get involved with the Breathwork group training program, or any other programs I offer, there's a link in the description to apply for a free session with me, or you can message me on Instagram or my email at kb@realityfiles.com. Thanks for being here, my friends. Go check out my other video on the Kybalion and another video I have on the wisdom of even-mindedness. Blessings, and may the force be with you. Cheers.